An independent school is a school that is independent in its finances and governance. It is not dependent upon national or local government for financing its operations, nor reliant on taxpayer contributions, and is instead funded by a combination of tuition charges, donations, and in some cases the investment yield of an endowment. It is governed by a board of directors that is elected by an independent means and a system of governance that ensures its independent operation. It may receive government funds. However, its board must be independent. The terms independent school and private school are often synonymous in popular usage outside the United Kingdom. Independent schools may have a religious affiliation, but the more precise usage of the term excludes parochial and other schools if there is a financial dependence upon or governance subordinate to outside organizations. These definitions generally apply equally to primary education, secondary education, and tertiary education institutions. Australia. In Australia, independent or private schools are the fastest growing education sector, and over 85% of them have a religious or church affiliation. In 2009, there were 1,022 independent schools catering for around 500,000 students in Australia. Some independent schools are prestigious and enrolment highly sought after, with tuition fees to match. However, since the 1980s the number of low-fee schools catering for average Australians, and in some cases without any religious affiliation, has increased significantly. Independent schools in Australia receive approximately 75% of federal government school educational funding. Independent schools in Australia make up nearly 15% of total enrolments, while Catholic schools, which usually have lower fees, also make up a sizable proportion and are usually regarded as a school sector of their own within the broad category of independent schools. Enrollments in non-government schools has been growing steadily at the expense of enrollments in government schools, which have seen their enrollment share reduce from 78% to 67% since 1970. Australian independent schools differ slightly from those in the United States, as the Australian government provides funding to all schools, including independent schools, using a needs-based funding scheme based on a socio-economic status score. The school's SES score is derived by selecting a sample of parents' addresses and mapping these to a census-collected district from the Australian Bureau of Statistics census. The household income and education data are then used to derive an SES score for each school, which places it on a sliding scale of funding entitlement. On average, funding granted to an independent school is 47% of that required to operate a government school, the residual being made up by tuition fees paid by parents. Canada. In Canada, independent school refers to elementary and secondary schools that follow provincial educational requirements but are not managed by the provincial ministry. The term independent is usually used to describe not-for-profit schools. In some provinces, independent schools are regulated by the Independent School Act and must offer curriculum prescribed by the provincial government. Ontario has the most independent schools in Canada. Some of these include Ridley College, Havergal College, Crescent School, St Andrews College, Columbia International College, the York School and Ashbury College. Examples of independent schools in BC include Brentwood College School, Shawnigan Lake School, and St Michael's University School. Many independent schools in Canada meet national standards and are accredited by a national not-for-profit organisation called Canadian Accredited Independent Schools. Independent schools in British Columbia are partially financed by municipal governments by statutory and permissive tax exemptions. The objective under the legislation appears to be to level the playing field between the private and public sector schools. These tax exemptions over a period of time result in considerable investment by municipal governments in the private school sector, yet under the Government Act they have no stake in the properties as they remain in private hands. Dependent on the financial structure of the school, parents may have a financial stake during the time of enrollment of their students, but the investment is not continuous and the enrollment deposit, which provides for the school's capital expenditures, is returned upon leaving the school. The return deposit is bridged by the subsequent new enrollment, and it follows that no parent makes a long-term investment in the school. The municipal governments on balance appear to be the only long-term investors through the statutory and permissive tax exemptions, with no ability to recapture these costs when the school is dissolved or any portion of the assets are disposed of. Robert Land Academy in Wellandport, Ontario is Canada's only independent military-style school for boys in grades 6 through 12. United Kingdom. In the United Kingdom, independent education has grown continually for the past 20 years. England, Wales, and Northern Ireland. In England, Wales and Northern Ireland, the more prestigious independent schools are known as public schools, sometimes categorised as major and minor public schools. Although some may regard membership of the Headmasters' and Headmistresses' Conference as what defines a school as a public school, the term refers to the schools being for the public and controlled by a board of governors drawn from the public. Scotland. In Scotland, schools not state-funded are known as independent or private schools. Independent schools may also be specialist or special schools, such as some music schools, Steiner Waldorf education schools, or special education schools. Scottish independent schools currently educate over 31,000 students and employ approximately 3,500 teachers. Schools are represented by the Scottish Council of Independent Schools. All schools are still inspected by the State Inspectorate, Education Scotland, and the Care Inspectorate. Independent schools in Scotland that are charities are subject to a specific test from the Office of the Scottish Charity Regulator, designed to demonstrate the public benefit the schools provide. United States, independent schools in the United States educate a tiny fraction of the school-age population. The essential distinction between independent schools and other private schools is self-governance and financial independence, that is, independent schools own, govern, and finance themselves. In contrast, public schools are funded and governed by local and state governments, and most parochial schools are owned, governed, and financed by religious institutions such as a diocese or parish. Independent schools may be affiliated with a particular religion or denomination. However, unlike parochial schools, independent schools are self-owned and governed by independent boards of trustees. While independent schools are not subject to significant government oversight or regulation, they are accredited by the same 6 regional accreditation agencies that accredit public schools. The National Association of Independent Schools is a membership organization of American pre-college independent schools. The NAIS provides this definition of an independent school. Independent schools are 501(c)(3) non-profit corporate entities, independent in governance and finance, meaning, independent schools own themselves, and govern themselves, typically with a self-perpetuating board of trustees that performs fiduciary duties of oversight and strategic duties of funding and setting the direction and vision of the enterprise, and by delegating day-to-day operations entirely to the head of school. Independent schools finance themselves, largely through charging tuition, fundraising, and income from endowment. Independence is the unique characteristic of this segment of the education industry, offering schools 4 freedoms that contribute to their success: the freedom to define their own unique missions, the freedom to admit and keep only those students well matched to the mission, the freedom to define the qualifications for high-quality teachers, and the freedom to determine on their own what to teach and how to assess student achievement and progress. In the United States, there are more independent colleges and universities than public universities, although public universities enroll more total students. The membership organization for independent tertiary education institutions is the National Association of Independent Colleges and Universities. References. Further reading: Hayne, David. What Has Happened to Episcopal Schools? The Living Church, 228, No. 1, 21-22. External links: Independent Schools Council of Australia, National Association of Independent Schools, Canadian Accredited Independent Schools, Scottish Council of Independent Schools.